Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the Stanford Biodesign Innovation Fellowship. My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm the Fellowships Manager, and we are so happy to have you here today. Leading the webinar will be our Director for Program Development, Dr. James Wall. Dr. Wall is a pediatric surgeon at Stanford's Lucile Packard Children's Hospital and co-director of the UCSF Stanford Pediatric Device Consortium. He's also an alumnus of the Innovation Fellowship and completed the program in 2006-07. We're also joined by Dr. Sandra Ruggles, one of our 3 assistant directors for the fellowship. Sandy has a PhD in biophysics and is the president of Summit Rock Consulting Strategy, with years of experience in the marketing and strategy spaces of the health tech industry. Sandy also completed the program in 2009 and 10. So just a few housekeeping items for today. We'll be saving about 20 to 30 minutes at the end of the webinar for a live Q&A session. So please enter your questions in the Q&A chat feature in your webinar dashboard. We will not be using the raise hand or chat features. Everything will go into the Q&A section. So please use that if you've got a question, and type those in at the end. We'll try to get to as many as we can. This webinar is also being recorded if you'd like to go back and watch it later. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over now to James and Sandy.
Great, thanks, Emily. So I think Sandy's going to get started for us, and then I'll jump in towards the end.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm just getting set up so that I can advance the slides. Okay, and it looks like I'm ready to go. So I'll start off today with an introduction to the Stanford Byers Center for Biodesign as a whole, our mission and our philosophy, and then we'll move into talking more about the Innovation Fellowship itself, in particular, how we train the biodesign approach across the 10-month period that is the fellowship. So you'll get both a brief primer in the approach itself and in conjunction with that, an understanding of how that fellowship academic year is put together. Oh dear. So let's see if I can advance the slide. There we go, perfect. So our vision at Stanford Biodesign is to be a global leader in advancing health technology innovation to improve lives everywhere. And we implement this vision through our mission, which is educating and empowering health technology innovators. Innovators like yourselves. And we do that partly because of our location. So at Stanford University, we're actually in a location that reflects our values as a program that brings together medicine, engineering, design, and business with a focus on innovation. And you can see that the Biodesign building, which is called the Clark Center, we're housed within the Clark Center, is also in a conjunction between medicine and engineering. And so we really feel lucky to have a location and to have a home at Stanford University where there are so many world-class leaders in all of these different disciplines who come together and participate in the center. So we have many different programs that we run, and our primary audiences are spelled out here on this slide. We have fellows. We train students at Stanford University. We interact with faculty and researchers, as well as universities around the world, and executives at medtech and health innovation firms. And we do this through a variety of different programs that we lead throughout the year. The Innovation Fellowship is a cornerstone of that, but we also have a fellowship for faculty within the Stanford University, and multiple courses that are aimed at both undergraduate and graduate students at Stanford. We administer grants that help take ideas and projects and advance them through the early phases of their development, as well as global initiatives, both partnerships with Stanford, Singapore Biodesign, Japan Biodesign, and BioInnovate, as well as a global faculty training program in which faculty come to Stanford for a period of time to learn how to teach the biodesign process at their own institutions. Lastly, we have our executive education course, which is an annual program, and alumni consulting. So, you know, this is a highly vibrant center with lots of different things going on, but I think our main impact is measured in the number of patients that have been positively impacted by the technologies that and the people who have been the output of the Stanford Biodesign program. So we have at today's count over 2.7 million patients who've been positively impacted by technology that got its start at Stanford Biodesign. And you can see the variety of different technologies that this this conveys. There's both ophthalmology companies, heart rhythm companies, software-based companies, digital healthcare companies, and the traditional med tech device companies. And so you see all kinds of variety in this list, and really a focus on solving unmet medical problems through innovation. And we're located in a really important place. The Bay Area is an incredible ecosystem for biotech, med tech, and health tech innovation. It has one of the highest concentrations of new biotech and health tech companies in the world. And what this means is that one of the things we can really tap into is a vast network of real world mentors who are able to help with untangling some of the questions that arise as technologies are developed, who are true experts in taking a project from idea to implementation. And we lean on them quite heavily over the course of our Innovation Fellowship and through all of the classes that we provide. So we're really fortunate in that sense to have a very strong network of local talent that we can lean on. So let's turn here to the Biodesign Innovation Fellowship itself. The key to the Innovation Fellowship, like the key to the success of our Biodesign Center, is that it brings together people from very different backgrounds in terms of their training, in terms of their thought processes, in terms of their view towards health tech innovation. And we use the Innovation Fellowship is used to develop that next generation of leaders in health tech innovation. We do this through teaching a repeatable needs-driven method for health tech innovation. That's our Biodesign Process. And alongside that, teach the fundamentals of implementation. So the fellowship operations team, you've got two of the folks who make sure the fellowship happens with a lot of day in and day out work on this webinar today. That's Emily and James. James is joined by another co-director of the fellowship, Dr. Dan Azaguri, and the last part of this powerful quartet is Lynn Dennant, who's our director for academic programs. On a week-to-week basis, the fellowship is led by a core leadership team that includes Dan and James and two other assistant directors in addition to myself. Kate Garrett and Vic McRae. And an important element of the leadership team is also Doug Raitt. He is our team psychiatrist, and he is the person who really helps teams facilitate their own group process and to be very intentional about how they work together. We have found him to be he is truly a cornerstone of how our teams are successful through their academic year. Also, part of the teaching and training of the Innovation Fellows is the extended leadership team. And these are the folks who are in charge of the implementation, value, and engineering components of the fellowship year. So Gordon and Uday are focused on business implementation, strategy, and business fundamentals. Jan and Cynthia focus on healthcare economics and value. And Ross and Farzad are the two who are facilitate the prototyping, the innovation, the invention, the brainstorming part of the work. So as you can see, you've got a huge group of faculty, and then on top of that, during your time as an Innovation Fellow, you will interact with some of our global faculty as well. As I mentioned, we have the Global Faculty Training Program. So there are frequently trainees, international trainees in and around Stanford Biodesign while our Innovation Fellowships is going on. And so we have a cohort of leaders as well who are really doing our leadership of our international programs. And then the staff. So the Innovation Fellowship is a very well-organized and well-run program because of and really absolutely vital to the staff that is part of the organization. Emily is just one of the many people who make sure that your time at Stanford is both seamless and smooth, and that you can really focus on the academic experience of going through and learning the biodesign process. And last but not least, we have industry leaders and mentors for each of the teams. So we're very fortunate to have a partnership and with these leading local medtech CEOs who are able to give real world feedback to fellows about the projects that they're working on, and to help them navigate the path from need to idea to invention to an implementation plan. So let's talk about the biodesign approach. We're going to transition here from talking about the who of the program to the what of the program, and a little bit of an introduction to the biodesign approach, and then we'll go through on a more month-by-month basis how the fellowship is organized. So the biodesign approach is based in design thinking. The idea that you're going to take a process here that starts in clinical immersion, takes you through need characterization to ideation, invention, prototyping, and testing. This would be a very standard approach that's well founded in the world of product design. But what happens if your user that you're trying to empathize with and your user that you're trying to focus on is what we call the eight-headed monster called healthcare? So it's not just the interaction between the patient and a physician. We're also talking about so many different other contributors into this space. You have the regulatory bodies, the insurance companies, the healthcare providers themselves, as well as the forces of the market and the forces of media, all contributing into what is healthcare and healthcare delivery. And add on top of that some of our national leadership that is driving healthcare policy in a variety of different directions, so much so that we are constantly feel that the landscape underneath us is shifting. So the biodesign process was built to take and blend both a design-based approach or design thinking-based approach to healthcare innovation with one that takes into account the many, many stakeholders that are healthcare. So this is the process overall. It starts with needs finding, with an identify phase. Needs finding, going out and identifying a huge variety of problems that you observe in the healthcare arena, and particularly in the topic area that you are introduced to for your academic year. Needs screening occurs after that. So it's a generate and then filter process in which you filter down to those needs that have that fit the profile of the screen that you have selected. Once you have generated a few very clearly articulated and well thought out needs, you'll move that into concept generation, where you go back to being generative and create as many different concepts that fit that need as possible. Then again, come back through a filtering and focus process with your concept screening to get down to just a couple of concepts that really both solve the need and are technically feasible. And then from there, you move into the implementation phase, where you add in and layer in so many of these additional elements that we know are important when it comes to healthcare innovation: intellectual property, business strategy, regulatory, and value. And all of that comes together in the end of the implement phase with the business planning process. So we're going to go through how this process aligns with the way that we do the fellowship. But first, I should introduce you to our 2019-2020 fellows. They've just graduated. We had 3 teams this year: Team Syzygy, Team Entropy, and Team Mosaic. Their focus area was in otolaryngology, or ENT. And we're really proud of them. They did a fantastic job. I think James will talk at the end a little bit about how COVID-19 impacted the fellowship this year. But this has been a stellar group of people who really came through the program this year. Okay, so let's talk about what that academic year that our fellows just completed is, and talk to you about how this all fits into a 10-month fellowship. So we start with boot camp. Boot camp is where you meet your team. You start building the foundation of how you're going to work together. You're given the topic area for the fellowship year, and you're also given a mini project. So because you are only most likely going to be coming up to speed in the clinical area that we assign to you for the year, the mini boot camp gives you a chance to run through the biodesign process on a highly accelerated basis in a project area and on a need that has already been identified for you. And so it's a 4-week experience in conjunction with your getting lectures from experts in the clinical area that will be your focus for the fellowship year. From there, you move into clinical immersion. This is an approximately 6-week period of time where you are full-time in our in the Stanford medicine operating rooms, in the hospital, in the clinics, really doing observations. Your focus is to really learn as much as possible as you can about all of the different problems that are being experienced in the clinical area that you have been assigned. So what you're going to be doing in that observation, you don't just write a card that says, oh, this looks like a problem. We have a very specific way of writing down these unmet needs that are found within healthcare, and that is to write a needs statement. So a needs statement is built on 3 pillars: a problem, a population, and an outcome. So and it typically takes the form of a way to solve a problem in a population that provides an outcome. And during that clinical immersion, your job is to generate as many of these need statements as possible. So it's in a typical innovation fellowship year, their teams are generating well over 200 need statements based on problems both large and small that they've observed in that intense observation period. So you've got a list of 200. Now what do you do with it, right? So that's where needs validation and selection comes in. So you're starting with, you know, over 200 needs. That's a lot of information. Usually you just take from a top level perspective, you'll start by setting up your filters that are these gray lines here vertically. And those filters can be all kinds of different things, but they are the ways that you as a team have decided to focus the kinds of needs that you want to work on at the end of the funnel. This could be by population size. This could be by the severity of the need for a patient. Many different things can go into those filters as you take them forward. So you'll start with 200 and you use top level data to make some decisions. And then you end up with about 80. 80 is still a really large number of needs to be trying to understand and decide between. So you'll use slightly deeper data, particularly around the pathophysiology. You may go back to some of the physicians you observed it with to understand how much of a problem it is in order to come down to 24. This is where you really have to start doing additional diligence, and you'll build up the criteria for that need. You'll draw the box essentially of what a successful solution looks like. And so you have to draw the boundaries of what that solution might be like. And in all of this, you're trying to do this in a technology independent way. We really focus with these needs on identifying a problem in healthcare that is technology agnostic. So then with 8, you'll go into your brainstorming and concept development. And that brainstorming and concept development allows you to open up and come up with a whole bunch of different new ideas around how to solve each of these different need statements. And then from there, you'll filter down to 4. So over the course of the fellowship, you'll go from 200 down to just a couple of needs that you have validated and really deeply understand and are driving new invention around. All right, and I think right in here was about where I was going to switch it back to James. So we were going to hand off here in the middle in the needs validation. So Emily, I think I'm going to hand it back. I think I can hand back the remote control to you, and James, you can hop on from here. James, do we have you back?
I think his internet was being a little fussy, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually don't see him at all here on our webinar, Emily. I'm going to just keep on going. And if James is able to join back in, we'll have him take over.
Great.
So I'm hoping I can advance slides without and continue the presentation. So, all right, so let's talk about needs validation. So what are the things you do to ensure that you have a need that's really meeting? There's a couple of different things that you can do. You can look at the market size. So how many people have this problem, how many devices are already sold to solve this problem, or how many other technologies already exist to work on this problem. You can look at the treatment landscape, and you can look for how the problem is already treated in today's healthcare system. and look for how that does or doesn't really meet the needs of the patients and the users in the space. And you can look at the patient impact. As I commented on before, you might choose as a team to select for problems that have high mortality rates or have significant long-term patient impact. Oh dear, I did think this was going to happen. Let's see if it will let me advance. It does. Great. Okay, so once you get through your needs validation stage, we move to the invention stage. As you can see, Invention at Stanford Biodesign involves lots of sticky notes. So we'll walk through how we take that process forward. So you have a couple of needs. You're really excited about them. We take you to the D school and you learn how to do brainstorming there at the D school. They teach you how to use things like how might we questions to direct the brainstorming sessions that you might do. And you do lots and lots of brainstorming multiple times. We also have an incredible team that helps with prototyping. Ross in particular leads our Collab, where we have a variety of different tools that will help you create both looks like and works like prototypes that give you an ability to rapidly screen your concepts for their viability and feasibility. So now you've got a need and a concept. So what are you going to be validating against? Well, it becomes more complex, right? It's not just the need, the healthcare need that you're trying to solve. It's also how that concept fits into the landscape of potential solutions, and whether the concept itself aligns with the opportunity associated with the need. So that could be filtering on things like the market pathway, the impact to physicians, hospitals, or payers, or your potential to be able to write intellectual property that will protect that idea from potential competitors. So a couple of other things you might use to filter your concepts and match them up to these validated needs that you've put together. So once you have moved into these concepts, this is where you're working with our implementation team with Uday and Gordon, and they will take you through a process in which you will screen all of your concepts against major factors that would cause you to decide to or decide not to pursue particular concepts. And so you can see this sort of red light, green light approach that we use for understanding at a very high level whether specific concepts are going to be able to be projects that are viable. And that's by things like feasibility, the intellectual property or freedom to operate, the business model, the regulatory path, or the potential for reimbursement. And of course, not every project is going to be green all the way across. In fact, it's very infrequent that everything is green all the way across. And instead, as team members, you'll have to make trade-off decisions between what factors are the ones where you're willing to be at risk more as you move a project forward. So as we go through the biodesign experience, I'll talk now here about implementation. You will have filtered those concepts by their viability to be future products. And then you come to the point where you need to build a business plan and come up with a plan for how that product could make it into patient use. And so that's a lot of different elements, from market validation, additional prototyping and testing, to a full design that goes through qualification, clinical trials, and eventually to commercialization. Depending on the type of product that you're developing, some of these could be shorter or longer. A implanted medical device is going to be very different from a digital healthcare tool. And we've had both in the program. And so we also talk and teach about startup formation, about assembling the resources you need to create a sustainable business that will impact patients. And again, that's a lot of the focus area of our implementation team. And it comes towards the end of the fellowship year. The last part of your fellowship year is something we call your customization period, or the externship period. This occurs in the last part of the fellowship, because it is really intended to allow you as an individual to decide what additional next steps you need. So it's a 1 month period at the end of the fellowship when you can customize your experience at Stanford Biodesign. And we have had fellows do externships at venture capital firms, at design firms like IDEO, at incubators like the Foundry, and at major medtech companies like Medtronic or Edwards. So there's a variety of different options, and you would choose an option that would best suit your own career plans and your own interests in your own education. And so we've come to the end of a 10-month period, but we haven't talked about what the experience of being a fellow is like. It is an intense experience. It is a full-time experience, but it's also a really fun experience. We have a lot of opportunities to get together as group, and as a way to both play and to just relax together as an organization. So I'll end here a little bit with what happened with COVID-19 this year, and what we think it's going to mean for the coming fellowship year. So as everyone is well aware, starting in March, we moved to a all remote version of the fellowship. So you can see we had a number of fellowship meetings that all had to happen and convert to Zoom. We moved our final presentations and our graduation ceremony all to virtual formats this year. And the fellows really were able to roll with that change and disruption. They also took the opportunity, and we gave them the opportunity to work on COVID-specific projects. And so there was a boot camp style rapid innovation process that happened in that last month, where folks were really coming up with all kinds of great and exciting needs around COVID-19 to address. And some of those are actually moving forward as well. So what does this mean, though, for going forward with future fellowship years? We have moved back the start of this coming year's fellowship to align with the academic year at Stanford. So those fellows won't be starting until September. And while we don't know what the impact will be on interviews this year, it's possible that we will move to a virtual format for interviews that you would participate in as candidates for the 2021-22 fellowship year. So I guess I would say, when it comes to COVID, adversity leads to innovation. We had some really cool ideas come out of the fellows this year. You can see David Hinden with these funny little yellow lines over the top of him, where they were looking at safe degowning for healthcare workers who are having to put on and take off the really bulky PPE that is required for patients in the hospital. And also a whole team that has been looking at ways to appropriately, non-invasively ventilate patients in a way that doesn't expose all of the other people in the room to the airborne aerosolized virus. Yep, I already went through what this means for you, but we'll talk about this. Interviews may be virtual. This year, the fellowship timeline may be impacted. We don't know for the 2021-22 year where we would, what would happen with the academic year and how that would stand. And some of the logistics on campus are certainly going to be modified for this year, and that may continue into the following fellowship year. So we can't perfectly predict what's going to happen, but we are committed to continuing to offer the fellowship as a full-time experience at Stanford. And to really have that strong partnership with the Stanford medicine that has been the hallmark of our program to date. All right, so I want to talk here about the thing that we consider our true product at Stanford Biodesign. With a mission that is focused on educating and empowering health tech innovators, our true product is always the people who come out of the program. Our alumni fellows, and this is a picture from a previous year's graduation. We really value and focus on our product as the people, and our community as that community of both alumni and advisors and mentors that makes up the entire Stanford Biodesign ecosystem. All right, so Emily, I think this takes us to the end, and we're going to do some question and answer, right?
Absolutely. James is about to hop back on. So if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A section of your dashboard there, and we will try to get to as many as we can. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And Sandy, are you able to see
Oh my goodness, lots of good questions here. I'm scrolling through it just to get a really good idea of what it is that's going on. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. So some of these questions, I would point you to the FAQs section of the Biodesign website for answers to some of these questions that are up here. I want to make sure that I call out the ones that are potentially different from the kinds of things that we have already answered on the website. So here's a really good question, which is, based on the material in your presentation, it appears that medtech is the most common focus of teams. Are other areas, biotech in particular, also welcome? Many thanks, Daniel Budd. So the focus of the fellowship has traditionally been medtech innovation, and that's where we have the strongest support when it comes to the kinds of resources that we have as a organization. I will say that the process itself is a needs-driven innovation process. And so as a needs-driven innovation process, it does not, the kinds of solutions that you come up with may or may not be traditionally medtech. My background in particular is actually is a science background and is in biotech. And I have seen, in particular out of this program, we have had teams decide to go forward with products that would follow a drug-based pathway through the FDA. And we've had a number of digital health companies come out of, and projects, excuse me, come out of the program. So while I would say there has tended to be a directionality towards medtech, the teams themselves are the ones who decide what kinds of projects to work on and which of those projects is the one they want to accelerate to the top. James, did you want to add a comment?
Nope, I just wanted to let you know that I'm back. Had a little internet issue there, but yeah, let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
Actually, Sandy, I will add one thing. I think, one theme that came across to me as I was looking at the Q&A was, the stage of innovation, and a lot of questions that sort of, I think we answered by showing what we do, but I just wanted to be clear that kind of the goal and the stage, we want to teach a repeatable process of innovation. We focus on healthcare and health tech, but it's really teaching you to be an innovator from the very start of observing a problem and then enabling you and empowering you with the tools to take it all the way to patient care. So it really is across the spectrum. And our goal, and someone asked about metrics, is to make an impact on healthcare. And, our number one goal is putting out people who can do that. We talk a lot about the companies and the products. That is not our goal. You are not required in any way to do that. You can have a huge impact in other ways, through research, through working in industry, through working in consulting, through working for the FDA. There's a lot of ways to have impact. So we talk about the companies because it's interesting and it's a way of showing a lot of what our fellows do. but it's not the only thing. So I just wanted to kind of add that from skimming over the Q&A, and then we can maybe take the next specific question.
Great. Thanks, James, for reinforcing that. I think that's a really important point to make about the focus of the center and the mission of the center. Let's see. There's a couple questions about needs and where needs are identified from that I think I can wrap up into one. There's one here about, are the needs identified during the clinical immersion? It looks like by team or shared as a group. And then they want to know if they're all in the same clinical area, and then are outside needs allowed. So I'll address this by saying, we assign fellows, the 12 fellows, into teams of 4, and those are assigned during boot camp. So you can start building your team dynamics. We assign the clinical area that you are going to be immersed in for the year. And so that's where the lectures at the beginning of boot camp are focused on, and it's where we have fellows start when they do their clinical immersion. Each team works somewhat independently from each other in terms of the generation of those needs. And so each team comes up with 200 or more in their needs finding period. And we do some team of 12 type activities as we talk about process and we talk about prototyping, but each team is a cohort of 4 that goes throughout the entire academic year together.
And I'll just add to that, Sandy, there was a couple of things that popped up around, do you have to innovate in your specific area of clinical immersion or clinical interest? And another person asking about kind of whether they should do it in their specialty. And I'll just touch on that for a second. The answer on a high level is no, you don't have to innovate in your area. We encourage you to really, track down whatever problems you see. And many times we've seen someone observing thoracic surgery, for example, and coming up with a problem in anesthesia, and that leads them down a different path. So we do want people to be true to the process. The reason we have a clinical area is that it's pretty hard to say, go innovate across all of medicine. We need you to have connection points, faculty members, places to go. So that's the point of having an area, but you're not limited to it. To answer the question about whether you should sort of do it within your area, we actually think it's better training, particularly for the physicians, to innovate outside your area, to take a fresh look, to learn the process in its truest form without your biases as a practicing physician in that area, learn how to do it, and then you can go back if you choose and focus strategically in your area of medicine. But that's our general philosophy on those 2 points.
Great. I'm looking through these to see, let's see.
There are a couple of questions that are asking about the right stage to apply, or MD versus residency. Could you guys speak to that?
Sure, I can take that one, Emily. Thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, I noticed someone had said they're just coming out of undergrad. Another person was talking about being in residency. So let me kind of go point by point by the 3 different general categories. We take applications from anybody, but if you're a clinician, physician, or nurse, we generally like to see that you're either in residency training or have a couple of years of experience in order to come in. We generally don't take people straight out of medical school. We like people to have some frontline experience as clinicians. Again, whether that's nursing, NPs, physicians, OTs, etc. For the engineers, we do like to see generally an advanced degree, master's and/or PhD. And we value some experience, but certainly we've taken people straight out of masters and PhDs who've had great experience in those programs. And then finally, people with more industry type experience, things like consulting, FDA reviewers, working for companies in R&D or marketing or whatever. We generally value a couple of years of experience to bring to the program. So that's the general, kind of generally the sweet spot that we see, and generally the people that enter the program. And so I do think that a couple of the questions highlighted people that might be a little bit early. You're always encouraged to apply, but there's oftentimes we would say, maybe it's better to get a few years of experience and come back to us for people who are straight out of particularly undergrad or med school. or nursing school.
I have one question here that says, my impression is that you don't include regulatory payer considerations or value add based considerations until you're already at a prototype. And why is that? I would actually say that all of that comes in at the concept level stage. So typically the concepts are being evaluated against at least a high level understanding of what their regulatory path would be, of what payer considerations might be associated with that concept. And so there's a certain amount of iteration going on around concept development associated with both regulatory value and payer in the course of that. And in particular, our value work stream, the one that's led by Jan and Cynthia, starts as early as October in a traditional format. So that would have been starts as early as needs validation and screening, so that even in the process of screening, you're have the education around how those might impact concepts as they move further through the process. So definitely don't think that we're leaving those till late in the cycle. They're certainly part of the program and your own filtering and decision-making process as you are taking your needs forward and moving them into the concept development stage. Let's see.
Sandy, I see another one here. I was going to take a question about differentiating ourselves from other biodesign programs. We like to think that we've been here for quite a long time, so we're very well established, a 20-year history. Certainly when you look at the metrics around the technologies that have come out, the leadership positions which our fellows are in, we've published papers on that, which you're welcome to take a look at, on the impact that we've had. We think we can really stack up to most other programs, many of which we helped them to start, given our long history here. So I think when you look both at our history and the impact that we've had, I think you won't find a better program. There's another question on the fellowship being really focused on innovation. So should business and finance professionals with experience in med tech apply? Absolutely. Innovation to us is both the idea, but also the execution. And you can't have, innovation is not just ideas. It's got to be execution. We have a significant focus on what we call implementation and, of course, value. Those are two entire modules that we've built into our fellowship because it's so important to understand, an idea and a prototype's one thing, but getting it through regulatory, making sure that your COGS make sense, that you can return on an investment, that the landscape, the competitive areas, et cetera, understanding direct-to-consumer marketing. I could go on and on and on, but all of those things are critical to ultimately getting a technology to a patient. And so absolutely, we encourage people with med tech experience and on the finance business side to apply. Sandy, do you have another one you want to take there?
Just to add on that too, I saw a couple quick questions around whether design background is something that we value. That also, a design background experience is one that we've had various fellows come in from that background as well. So certainly is a background and a type of degree that we welcome in the program. There are some questions here that we might want to answer, James, that are more about the COVID visa rules. How will this program work if you are applying for it from outside the United States?
Yep.
I would say that we really can't predict what's going to be happening from a visa position with regards to the fall of 2021, which is what this program year, the applications are for. We do have, and Stanford has a very strong Bechtel, I don't know what they are, program, department that focuses on visas and on aiding that visa. So we typically have anywhere from 1 to 3 fellows each year who are from outside the United States and are needing to come in via a visa. And so while we can't predict what's going to be happening there, I wouldn't say that we're using that in any way to filter the candidates that we expect this year. And we would encourage applications from anybody.
Yep, I agree with that. And I'll just add that this year we have 2 international fellows that will be starting in the fall, in September. And while we did have to do some extra work in terms of writing letters and showing that they may in fact be involved in COVID-related research, which is potentially part of the needs finding process, we have been able to at least push them up to the point of having interviews in their local embassies, and hopefully we'll get them here. So we are doing everything we can to get people in internationally. We do value that diversity along with many other axes of diversity.
I think there's one other comment that might be made here, which is the fellows who come, you are either designated as a postdoctoral fellow or a non-matriculated graduate researcher. So there's 2 different technical designations within the university. There is no difference from our side programmatically about what the fellows are. These are the designations you have within the university have to do with what degrees you have, and you are treated as a fellow. That does mean that when you graduate, you are an alumni of Stanford Biodesign, but Stanford University doesn't consider our fellows to be the same as an undergraduate student. I would call it that is the best way to put it with regards to being considered alumni with the benefits of alumni.
I noticed a question in the chat about the team makeup. Maybe touch on that. They asked if we're looking for certain types or quotas. I'd say we have 2 kind of axes that we generally focus on when it comes to teams. One is diversity of background and training. So yes, we do generally have 1 person with clinical experience, someone with engineering experience or computer science or something in the technical field, and then someone with some type of other, we generally call it industry, but FDA would also count, consulting, etc. So we generally have those 3 kind of diverse backgrounds on teams. And then we also think a little bit about what roles people might play. And we generally like to have someone who's got some building prototyping skills. We like to see members of the team who have significant capability in terms of creativity, and members who have a lot of organizational skills. So we kind of think about it on those axes. But the teams are made of 4, so there's no exact quota. Those are just generally the things that we think about and look for.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that when it comes to applications, we choose a team of 12 with an intent to create some, we have some thoughts around what those teams of 4 are, but we don't, we determine what the teams of 4 are at the initiation of the fellowship. And so when we are selecting at the level of the interview process to the team of 12 fellows, that's really the cohort that we're selecting for. And we're looking for a nice variety there of the types of people in the group.
So Sandy, I see another 2 questions here that I'll kind of take on. One, is it possible to apply with a concept already for a pre-identified problem and receive clinical immersion? The answer to that one, unfortunately, is a straight no. Again, our mission here, what we want to do is teach people to a repeatable process of innovation. And we want to really start fresh from the ground up so that you really learn all the skills of identifying many, many problems, sifting out what is the best opportunity to make an impact on patients, and then ideating around it and implementing. So we do feel very strongly that you need to come in fresh. Now, if you've got ideas, that's great. There's a lot of opportunity, of course, after the fellowship, as you've built a network and you've made connections, to go work on those if you still believe they're valuable. But we do ask people to set aside pre-existing projects to come in fresh and build something new with a new team of people. Another question on the other end of that spectrum is, how can fellows implement knowledge in a corporate environment? And I'd say that the general process of biodesign has gained a lot of momentum within the medtech industry. Many companies, including Edwards, BD, others, have actual in-house biodesign teams. They call them that. Many of our fellows participate on those teams, and they really are charged with looking at clinical areas, usually within the strategic focus of the corporation, right? Corporations do have that additional filter of, you know, where we have a sales force, where we have expertise, but these teams are able to identify new needs, build new products, and even whole new business units. And we have seen that over the years be very successful. And then I'll just answer this last one that popped up about IP. Again, this is a paid fellowship. As a paid employee of Stanford, you do have to assign your IP to Stanford University. Stanford has a very clear policy on IP. It's the royalties or anything that comes in on IP is divided in 3 parts. A third of it goes to the university. A third goes to the department in which something was invented, which for us is biodesign and or the clinical department that it's invented in. And a third goes to the inventors themselves. So I will also add that our Office of Technology Licensing, which manages IP, is very good, very experienced. They also can be an advantage in terms of being able to invest in IP early when teams typically don't have funding to do it. They can be strong advocates, and they can protect your intellectual property at a time when you may not have the funding to do it. On the flip side, they're also very pro-inventor when it comes to licensing. And many of the technologies developed at Biodesign have been licensed out. And that has been overall very successful. And Stanford, again, you know, given a choice between, you know, a large corporation versus the inventors who have a good plan in place, will generally go with the inventors.
Hey, James, I see a question here about if a team is working on a solution that requires research time that needs to go beyond the end of the program, what do we have with regards to extension? And I would say that that is not an uncommon experience at all. That many of the team projects are at the level of early prototype success, but need a significant more amount of development in order for those projects to become products, to become, you know, potentially have patient impact and to go all the way through a development process. And so the Biodesign program does have some summer extension program and funding and some grants that we have that can extend your time at Stanford Biodesign. And then we also administer some grants like the Coulter Foundation grant that can fund projects over a period of time. And so if a project really has the wheels to go forward, there are funding opportunities within the university to continue to work on that project and to continue to take something forward.
Yeah, I think that's right, Sandy. And I'll just add to that when you look at the data, the average time from a project finishing the fellowship, so the end of the fellowship, to being mature enough to receive significant investment, what I would call, you know, a Series A venture investment, you know, over $1 million-ish in private capital to really develop, that's about 18 months. So, you know, projects that come straight out of the fellowship are usually not quite ready. They do need some additional work. Sandy mentioned multiple mechanisms in addition to grant funding. There are local accelerators and incubators that we have strong relationships with. And there is also angel funding. So those are generally the kind of the bridges that we see for projects to go from end of fellowship to mature enough and de-risked enough for a larger strategic or venture type investment.
Emily, might open this up to you if there's anything you want to point people to here as we come into the last minute or so, references.
Yeah, absolutely. We are about to wrap up. Just a reminder that applications are due August 14th, and that includes everything must be in: your letters of reference, your essay, your video, your transcripts. All of those things are due on the deadline, so please make sure to get those in. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and please read through the FAQ section of the website where many of the questions that were posed today will be addressed, and we look forward to receiving your application. Thank you for joining us today. This will be posted on our website once we get the recording set, so feel free to watch it again. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a great day.